All right, everybody. Today we're looking at Amazon Cognito, the simple and secure user sign up, sign in, and access control. Cognito is Amazon's built-in identity management, and it's a nice way to handle your authentication. It has a great free tier program with 50K active users for free per month. So kind of the whole pattern that you want to use this in. You got some user, you got some app, it's a web app or mobile, like an iOS app or Android app or something like that, mobile device, and you need to call your backend service, right? Your backend service gives some data back. You got to be able to sign in your users, sign up, handle forgot passwords, all that kind of stuff. And maybe even you have a little microservice system set up here where you need to be able to have a user request a single service, and this service has to reach out to service B or service C. And you need to be able to know this request has been authenticated, right? So how do you do that? Well, you do that with tokens, right? Your user will sign in, they'll get a token, they'll pass it to your service. Your service will take that token and pass it through, showing that this request has been authorized throughout your system. And ways of doing that, you can roll your own. You can just do a custom identity manager. That's not really recommended. There's a lot of risk that goes with it. And for like just a little small scale app, there's not much reward to it. So I'd highly recommend using a managed provider like Cognito. And today we'll be building out a little authentication flow and service in Go. I find that AWS doesn't have very strong documentation in Go. There's not a lot of usage, and there's not much good content out there of how to actually build stuff on AWS and Golang. So that's the goal for today. Hopefully you find this valuable. Let's jump in. All right, so to use the AWS SDK from our service, we're going to need to create a user. So you can go ahead and go to IAM in your console, hop on here, and just select users. Or you can click on the left-hand side here, add user, and let's say Cognito demo user. And we want programmatic access here, which gives us an access key ID and a secret access key. So let's check that. Go to permissions. And let's see here. We'll try to use an existing policy here. And let's just find Cognito. And let's see. So this looks good. I think mainly we want the Cognito user pools. So we can use this one here. If you want to use this in production, I'd recommend building a custom one. But for this, we'll just do power user. And next. So we don't need any tags. These are kind of metadata about the user. So you could say like description, something along those lines. This user is used, in X service. So you could do something like that. We don't need that. We'll leave that blank. Let's review. Looks good. And we can create the user. Okay, so here's our user. Here's our access key ID and secret access key. Don't worry, by the time this video airs, this user is going to be long gone, and these will not be around anymore. So make sure you copy these to your clipboard, and next we'll take these back to our service. All right, let's take a look at our code here. So I've got a basic project set up here, just called Cognito Demo. I've run go mod init, init to set up this project here. And I have a Docker file, Docker compose, and a main.go. Main.go is totally empty right now. I have a folder, package, auth, and AWS. This is where we'll put all of our code that's going to basically interact with the AWS SDK. If you're interested in learning a little bit about Go app structure, I really recommend take a look at this GopherCon talk by Kat Zine. She runs through some really cool structures that she's used in her professional career previously, and I'm just a big fan of this one whole CMD package structure, and then have various packages within. So kind of using a watered down simplified version of this. I'll put the link in the description. Make sure you guys check that out. It's a really cool talk. Okay, so we're going to be building a little microservice here, and let's get a router. So we're just going to go through as simple as we can, as basic as we can. So for this, I'm going to use Chi, Go Chi. It is a lightweight, easy to use router. Big fan of it. So let's figure out their getting started guide here. So install it. We'll run this command. And that's not pasting. There we go. Go ahead and run that command. And now we'll just copy over their code right here. Bring it into main. Golang takes care of our imports. And the last thing we want to do is set up a port here. So we're using, to figure out where we're going to get this port from, don't just want to run on 3000. Inside of our Docker Compose, we have this set up here. We just have a single service. It's just called web. We're just building from this Docker file here. We're exposing this port 8080, and in the environment variables, we're setting that port. Also, we have our AWS access key ID and secret access key that we created earlier. Okay, for the Docker file, it's also really simple. We just take the base image from Golang. Don't care about a version. Just trying to keep this basic. Basically, add everything, change that directory, build everything, expose that port, and run it. So just as simple as can be. Go ahead and find these in the repository. I'll link with the source code. So we need to look for this environment variable. So we can say port os.getinv, and we're just looking for port. And then here for our connection string, we'll just do a little sprintf, and we'll give it a string, and that's port. Okay, so there's a super basic basic server setup. Let's run this. Docker Compose up build, and it's going to run. And it looks like we're started, so let's curl it now. And we see we get back welcome right here, and we get a little log statement from this fancy Chi middleware that we get for free. Okay, that looks good. Let's move on here. All right, so we're back in our main.go. We have our environment variables all set up. So now let's make an endpoint for our users to sign up. So r.post, we'll call it sign up. That's our endpoint, and it'll just be our sign up handler. So let's make this handler function. And handler functions need to look like this. They need to take that response writer and request. And we'll just write back sign up. Okay, so things we need to do in here, it's a post, so we're going to get a body with it. So we need to parse the request body. We need to build a sign up request for AWS, and we need to make the sign up request. Okay, so for this, let's make it just a basic struct, and we'll say sign up request. And this is what we're going to decode into, basically. So when you make a post request, you got to decode the body, and we'll decode it into this, into one of these structs. So this will have a username. It's just a string, and JSON will be lowercase username. Password, also a string, and the JSON will be lowercase password. All right, so here we'll parse that request body. So to do this, we'll make a struct. So we'll do rec, we'll call it req, and it's a sign up request. And now you can use this built-in JSON.newDecoder, give it r.body, and we'll say decode into the address of request. Okay, and this should return an error. And if error does not equal nil, we got to handle that error. So we'll do that http.error. We'll say, so it needs the response writer, it needs the error string, and it needs a code. And we'll say bad request. If we're not able to decode the body, probably means they give us a bad looking request body. All right. So now this is where we get to the SDK stuff. And to do this, we actually kind of need the SDK. So let's talk about how we're going to get that. That's going to live in here in this package auth AWS. Let's go find the Golang Amazon SDK. So I have it here. You can just Google AWS SDK for Go, find it right there. Let's do getting started. So all you need to run here are these commands: go get. This gets us the base SDK. This gets us the config package, which helps us parsing our environment variables. And then we need our specific services. And the specific service we want is Cognito Identity Provider. And this package lets us do things like create user pools. We can authenticate users. We can sign in, sign up, validate users, confirm users, etc. So this is the one we want. So we can copy this. We can just do a quick go get. All right. So we have all of our packages. So let's start doing things. All right. So this is the getting started page again for AWS. And you can see down here, they have some more getting started code here. So the basic gist, you load in your config, and this is getting it from your environment variables, right? Your secret access key, the region, etc. Load it in, check for any errors, and then otherwise, you can just create a client from our package. So we'll do our Cognito Identity Provider.new from config, and then you have access to all of the client's functions. So let's copy just this here. We're going to say func init, and just don't return anything for now. Okay, so config, and it just automatically loads that in. Context, let's get it from just the context package here, and I'm going to change this to background. Background and to do are identical. I just don't like seeing to do there. Okay, so now we have config there. So now let's do Cognito. Yep. So Cognito Identity Provider dot new from config. So let's do that, and I'm going to alias this to CIP just to make it easier to type. And what does this take? This just takes a config and some optional parameters. So you just do CFG, and that returns a pointer to the client. So that's just what we need. And I'm going to make a struct to hold this client because we're going to need one other thing in it as well. So we'll do Cognito client, we'll call it that. Just build a basic struct. And we need our app client ID in there, which is just a string. And then it's gonna have a pointer to CIP.client. Okay. And we should be able to return one of these guys now. So let's do address Cognito client, and let's return one. And so this takes a string and this. Okay. Whoops. And this needs a comma. All right, there we go. And remember, we have this client ID right here in the environment. So we can do os.getinf and paste the key in. Okay, so this sets us up. This gets all of our config parsed from the environment, and we just return our struct, which is just basically a wrapper around this client, but it just has an extra field, which is our client ID. And we'll use this in a bit here. So let's jump back to main. So if error does, okay, right here, let's just panic. Panic is not something you always want to do. This is prod. If you're running this in prod, handle that error better. For this video, we're just going to panic. Okay, and let's build that client out. So let's say Cognito client is equal to auth.init, and that should be good. Yep, unused variable. All right, so Chi has an awesome middleware called with value, and it takes a key, which can be anything, and it also takes a value. So the key, we'll just say Cognito client, and the value is just going to be this. All right. So it's Cognito client is our key, and it's a pointer to this struct that we made. All right, so that should be in the context of every request. And we can test that out, so let's try that. Get client from context. So let's do that. We'll say Cognito client, okay, equals r.context.value, and we said it was Cognito. We didn't said it was this here. And we just need to cast this to be auth.cognito client. And let's check it. So if not okay, that means there was a problem getting it from the context and casting it to this pointer, this auth.cognito client pointer. We'll return an error and we'll say could not retrieve Cognito client from context. And this is an internal server error. This is something on our side. All right. And let's just test this out. So we're going to try to call this signup endpoint, and it should parse our request body. It should try to pull the Cognito client out from the context, and it should return signup. So let's go ahead and build this. Docker compose up build. And I'm going to use curl, but I've made this body.json file here, and I've just given it a username and a password, and it's just what we need to make this request work. So you can do curl, and give it the endpoint, and if you pass this parameter d, you can just do at the file name, and it will make the request. All right, so we see it went through. Yeah, no errors. So we were able to pull this out from context, and we returned our signup. So awesome. So now let's make that signup request. So let's hop back here. Let's look at the exact function we want to call. So there is a signup function in here in this package. Let's click that, and it registers the user in the specified user pool and creates a username, password, and all of our attributes. So it takes a context, which we'll just get from our request, and it takes the input, this special input parameter here. These are just optional functions. You can look at those. We won't take a look at that today. So let's take a look at this input object. Okay, so we see it takes a client ID, and that is in our Cognito client struct. We can just pull it out of there. And then it takes the password and username. And everything else in this struct is just optional. Remember in the user pool, when we said no to the client secret, if we would have said yes, we would get a client secret, and we would need to generate a hash each time with that secret, plus the client ID, the app client ID, and the username each time we made that request. So it's just like an extra layer of security in your application. You can do it. We're not going to do that today. Okay, so this is a signup input. So we know that. So we'll say AWS request is a signup input. And this needed the client ID, which remember we can get from here, our Cognito client. App client ID, and then it needs a username, which we're going to get from our request.username, and a password from our request.password. Okay, and this is complaining. These take AWS strings, which are basically just a string, but it's a little wrapper that you have to do pretty much every time you're working with the AWS SDK and Go. So let's put those in. Okay, so there's our request, and now we can make our actual call. So we can do Cognito client.sign up, and it took a context, so r.context. If the user's connection and request gets canceled, we'll also cancel our request to AWS, so we kind of save resources there. And we pass in the AWS request object we just made. So now this returns a signup output and an error. So I don't really care about the output for now, just care about the error. And if error does not equal nil, we're just going to duplicate this. And this will be an internal server error this time. already defined error. Okay, so yep, parsing the request, getting our client from context. We're building the AWS request, and we're making the request. So let's go ahead and rerun this. I'll skip ahead. All right, and we're back. We're up and running. So let's go ahead and make that request. Let's see what happens. So we get sign up, we got a 200 back, and here's it logged. So this should have actually signed up a user. So if we hop back to browser, jump to our user pool, let's go to users and groups, and let's refresh the page. So here we see we got dev. That's our user that we just created here. They're enabled, but they're unconfirmed. So this is the first part of the flow. You sign up, and then we have to confirm the user we just created, and then they can sign in afterwards. So we'll handle the confirming users in the next video. So thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on the video. Really helps out the channel, and we will see you soon.